Anderson's feature-length directorial debut, Split Estate, won the 2010 Emmy Award for Outstanding Research. Split Estate is the recipient of numerous awards and is now at the core of a multi-year, multi-platform community engagement campaign, screening in festivals and communities across the country and internationally. The campaign seeks to educate legislators, educators, and communities about the true costs and long-term consequences of socially and environmentally irresponsible drilling. Since its broadcast, Split Estate has helped to create the momentum that has driven the issue solidly into the mainstream media and led to community organizing to create stronger protections. So please join me in welcoming Debra Anderson.
Hello, it's nice to be here. I just flew in from Santa Fe yesterday. I live in New Mexico, and I'm just curious, I usually speak like right after my film, and so has anybody seen our film, Split Estate? Oh, a lot of people, good, okay, that's what it looks like. So I didn't know how much I had to explain. I'm not like some amazing speaker or toxicologist or someone loaded with, good technical information for you, but I have been around this issue now for 5 years. I'm just a filmmaker who got tangled in this issue because of a story, and now it's something that obsesses me all the time, or actually the problem of energy is something that I think about and research all the time. And so I thought maybe the way I could be most useful to you is I'll tell you the story of our film and a little bit about my own community, because we had a little run-in with drillers also. And then I can answer your questions because I've been exposed to all kinds of stories all over the planet because of our film. And so if you have questions to ask, I'll try and answer them after that. But the story of our film is that 5 years ago I didn't know anything about oil and gas, zero, nothing. And right about this time of year, I read an article in On Earth magazine called Wrecking the Rockies. And it was about a county up in Colorado, in the mountains of Colorado, Garfield County, where they had been drilling for natural gas. And the article shocked me in two ways. First of all, because I couldn't believe that they could come in on private land and just drill without people's permission. And also, I couldn't believe that people were getting really sick because of it. And because it was at that time especially a completely silent story. Nobody knew anything about it. Even if you lived nearby an area, you might be in the next town, you would have no idea what they're experiencing, where the drilling is occurring. And so it was a complete surprise. And I was looking for my first film, my first story, because I'd been working in the industry for a long time. I'm part New Yorker. I was in New York City for 15 years before I moved back west and in the film business. And so I wanted to do my first film. And so I rented a camera, went up to Colorado and started filming in this community, and it just sucked me in. I thought I would make a little short film, and it became like this big story because what they were going through was just completely surprising and shocking to anyone from the outside. And so I spent 3 years working on the film, and just started in the back of my car, and then it was released on Discovery's Planet Green channel in the fall of 2009. And you up here were amongst the first communities to use it for activist purposes. And there were a bunch of pre-broadcast screenings right at that time. And here and in California and LA, Colorado and New Mexico, where people already knew about the film, and we're starting to know about drilling, and the drilling was coming into their community. And so that started outreach, which I had no idea that actually most of the work of the film is after you're done. And it became just like this, took over my life. And we've done outreach ever since. And then last fall it won an Emmy, which was a big shock, which was great. And myself and the 2 researchers went to New York for the ceremony and did not expect, to win at all. And so when they announced, we were just like, oh no. And I especially, because I would have to say something, but which has never been my strong. So anyways, it's been amazing. And through it, I've been exposed to a lot of communities who are going through what you're going through. And your best opportunity to fight the industry is now before they're here. And I can't stress that enough. And, get all your neighbors, because once they're in, they're really in. And all of the best success stories that I've seen are communities that have been able to get them out first before they get there. And it seems like through a bunch of different means. I mean, it completely depends on your own laws, your own makeup of your situation, how to do it. And it's happened differently in many communities. What happened for me is that after I started making the film, 8 months afterwards, an energy company targeted Santa Fe, which was a shock and a surprise, and they wanted to drill in the Galisteo Basin, which is this spectacular scenic spot southeast of town. And a couple out there were from Texas, and they had moved from Texas to Santa Fe to get away from the drilling because they had gotten sick from their aquifer being contaminated in Texas. And so they kind of sounded the alarm. And when I heard about it, I already knew by then what it would mean if they came and drilled there. And I started having nightmares because it didn't even occur to me that they'd come to my town. And so I got involved with those people, and Santa Fe did several things. We had a rough cut screening of Split Estate because it wasn't finished yet or even close. And the community, we invited 150 people who were very specific people who could actually accomplish something, like who had power in one way or another to see the film. And they were all suitably shocked. And so a coalition of people pulled together with all different skills. And first of all, the governor put a moratorium for, I can't remember if it was a year or 2 years. The county put a moratorium on drilling, which gave the community enough time to change their regulations. And at the time, there had been no bans of drilling anywhere. I mean, completely unheard of. This is only 2008. And that just wasn't even like a possibility. Though we had the no drilling ever group, we had the more moderate group, we had every different kind of perspective. And fortunately, they did not get each other's throats. They each sort of did what they were good at and worked together. And the county hired a planning company out of Kansas, and a lawyer out of LA, and spent a lot of money. And they completely rewrote our regulations for Galisteo Basin. And the day that the regulations were released, like a year and a half after the first play, first test drills were drilled, Tecton Energy started to sell its leases, and they left our county voluntarily because it would just be too expensive and too much of a hassle to drill there. And that's only a temporary solution, but it protected my home for a while until they get it in their heads again. But in a lot of different places, they've found different ways like that to stop the activity. I don't know if something like that would work up here. You have a pretty big resource. But I would just say from that, like keeping people working together, even with different perspectives, everybody has a piece of the puzzle that they can contribute, is important. And to not go at each other, to definitely go next to each other toward the goal, because the industry is incredibly organized. And they have a very motivating common goal, which is cash, and they work together beautifully. And so you need to do the same thing. And so that was my story about Santa Fe. And if you have any questions, there have been successes all over the place. I don't know if you follow the fracking news, but I worked with a community in Sweden. We went and showed the film because they were about to drill in this pristine, hundreds of years old, beautiful farmland. And I met these very sad farmers who already had test wells, and they created a resistance shell pulled out of there 2 or 3 months ago, and said it was because there wasn't a good resource, but they don't know if it was because of their activism or if it really wasn't a good resource. I think there are South Africans here, and they had some success recently in near Cape Town, and because they activated really quickly. So, and France just banned fracking, which is amazing. And so, you know, it's worth putting up the fight. And of course, you know about all the ones in your near area, you know, Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, Buffalo, a little town, Las Vegas, north of Santa Fe, totally banned drilling for a couple years. So anyways, do you have any questions for me? Yeah.
Is all of New Mexico protected now, or is it just Santa Fe?
We're a huge drilling state. We have long time old drilling, oil and natural gas. Just Santa Fe County is protected. And we're not legally protected. I mean, that's the whole point, is that you can't always do, I mean, I think it's amazing that there's starting to be actual bans. I mean, this wasn't even thought of a little while ago. We simply have really tight regulations that make it uncomfortable for them. And I know other places have done that too. Raton, which is further north, Lance Estrella, who's the lawyer in our film, he worked with them and he did the same kind of thing. Like, he really tightened their regulations. They had to do test wells, you know, and it made it really expensive to work there, and so they pulled out of the watershed there. They're still drilling in the area. But we have a ton of drilling. In the film, there's a story from northwestern in New Mexico that it's just shot to hell. I mean, they've been drilling there for 50 years in the Farmington area, and then the other big area is southeastern New Mexico. And they're trying to go in, actually, in communities all around Santa Fe, Mora County and Las Vegas up there, and they've been fighting like crazy up there. They've got a really good resistance. And now Rio Arriba County, and they don't have a resistance yet, because there's always that battle, you know, between people who want the money and the people who know what it's going to cost. So, yeah.
You said it's this state that all underground resources are owned by someone else. I assumed it was the government. That's not necessarily the case?
Not always the case. It's just as varied as surface ownership. So, I mean, you could even own part of your mineral, just a percentage of them, and somebody else owns the other part. This one woman was moving in Garfield County out of her house. She was lucky she was able to sell the house because a milk company owned minerals, and they really wanted to get them, and they didn't want any hassle. So they bought her house too. And you know, it can be the government, it can be private owners, somebody who owned the house 50 years ago. It just varies. So, yeah.
A comment on that. 3 years ago, we were looking, we moved here from Wisconsin, and we looked at a home just outside of Ithaca, and we were told that if we bought it, if we bought the house that was just outside of Ithaca, that was fine, except that the person who was selling it wanted to hang on to the mineral rights. And I said, what are they going to be? You know, I had no idea. And the realtor said, oh, salt, I think. And I said, I don't want anyone, you know, I didn't know what it was. It just didn't feel good to me. So,
And that's really common, because
that was here outside of Ithaca.
yeah, so maybe people are realizing, oh, there's a resource here I'm about to sell, and so they'll start to split because I'm going to keep them and make money because I won't be there to suffer the consequences. So, yeah.
There are split estates in New York State,
You know, somebody,
and in the western part of the state,
Oh, okay.
and there may well be, as she indicated, in this area of the state. And I was at a landowner coalition meeting where one of the lawyers for the coalition was speaking, and there were people in the audience asking how they can split their estates right in Cortland County, and he seemed very eager and willing to pursue that.
Help
So
them.
I think
Wow.
this is a money-making venture for many lawyers around. And
Sure.
I think they're going to capitalize on it. A question that I have is, are you collecting stories, continue to collect stories? Because there are so many that we hear of horror stories.
For the outreach, we keep in communication with a lot of people. We have a Facebook page, and we post articles, and because everybody's interested to see what's the latest. And so in that sense, but I'm not going to make the next movie about fracking, and so it's going to be more about the solution and picking that problem apart. And but I totally keep up on the news, and people send me stuff in the email all the time, and then we share it with everyone else. So, and I don't know who's doing the next energy film, so the fracking film. So, but yeah, I would love to. We stay in touch with a lot of people. We'd love to hear, you know. Splitestate.com and info@splitestate.com. So, yeah. Yes, I brought videos. I remembered. I was in Moab a couple weeks ago and didn't even remember one copy. So we had to like have someone drive to Grand Junction because yes, they're not out there yet, but I have a bag here and you can have an Epic Frack discount. So that'd be for like $19 or something. So yeah, I brought a bunch. Yeah. Yeah, they're up here if you want to, you know, in a green bag right there.
Do you know when Josh Fox's next installment of Gasland is due to come out?
I don't actually. I know it's like Gasland 2, and I think HBO already has hired it. And I know Josh, we're in a coalition together of energy films called Real Power. And it's 10 films about all different sides of the energy issue, from coal to solutions to gas. And but he moves really fast, Josh does. So I would guess that that's going to happen pretty quickly because he's also got money if HBO's behind him. So they'll move quickly on that.
So he's still filming, is he?
Sure, and he's doing a lot of this. He's still traveling to cities, and he's a huge activist. I mean, he's just busy. But he's filming at the same time, and I'm sure he'll get that done quickly. He's very motivated and a fast mover. So.
Well, as to your knowledge, is the industry, is the fracking industry, are they making a concerted effort to go global with their technology now?
Oh, absolutely. It's huge. Yeah.
Like I heard Russia had bought into some, technology recently.
Well, Russia has a big resource anyways. They've had a lot of drilling for a lot of time, but there are a lot of countries in Europe where it's going to be new. And so there's shale gas everywhere. I mean, the list of countries is very long. And as the South Africans can tell you who are here, there's new plays everywhere where the areas that they couldn't go before, and now they can. And it is definitely a global thing. And I bet you there's some of that in Josh's film. And Josh might be somebody to tell new stories to, too, if you go on his website, because I think he is working on, yeah. So.
This may be a little bit of a naive question, but I'm hoping that there's some positive aspect to your newfound fame. Are any politicians that actually have their hearts and minds in the right place contacting you to maybe see some background stories that didn't make it to your film, or maybe looking to do the right thing?
A lot of politicians have seen the film at every level, local, state, federal. And I don't, I mean, they're right, they seem to always be kind of in the middle and playing the balancing game, And there are, I think you have more success on a local level, to be honest, because there aren't the same, pressures on them. And I think people are having much better luck with their county commissioners or their, a mayor who is like, oh, aha, that could be bad for us, than they are on the higher levels. But it's really good that we're doing work on all of those things because, for the first time, all these federal things are happening, like the EPA investigating and, the Frack Act and that sort of thing. But, yeah, I don't know. I don't hold out a lot of hope for the politicians that are really in a high position and have a lot of pressure on them. Yeah.
Debra, huge applause for your Split Estate film.
Thanks.
You piqued our interest. You said that your next film is going to be in a solution. Can you please tell us something about that?
Yeah, well, we're just going to do an investigation of what the solution might be. And I think it turns out to be very confusing. There's a lot, it's very complex, the whole energy issue. There are so many different kinds of solutions. And so it'll focus on sustainable energy, but it'll just sort of explore how people are attempting to implement it in this country. And we're going to be, it's international, we're going to be going to Europe and places where they're pulling it off much faster than we are, and why is there a difference? So, yeah. Yes, please. I'm open to all those kinds of seeds. Those stories are really sucking in.
To direct people's attention to a grass plant and say, you know, that grass plant is smarter than you are and smarter than I am. It's turning sunlight into energy and matter. Einstein would be impressed by that grass plant. And I know someone in Europe came up with some kind of a plant coating that seems to do pretty well at creating electricity.
Oh, good. That's
and
interesting.
I also have heard that in a couple of European countries, they've discovered a simple thing that my kids used to say. Almost every problem is the solution to another problem. And so they don't have a garbage problem. They burn all their garbage in what looks like a little house. And everybody in the town gets their electricity and their heat from said garbage.
Exactly, and they have very efficient burners now, which...
And I think they said the pollution rate is about the same as you cooking a hamburger on your grill.
Right, yeah, so there's a lot of really practical, amazingly simple solutions, and it's like we're just not in the culture of doing it.
Well, the difference is that you don't have $6.7 million to buy gas leases in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, exactly.
Did I say million?
Billion. Okay, one more question, and then I guess we'll see you tonight. Yeah.
You invited influential people locally in New Mexico to come to a meeting and a pre-screening. I got the impression from what you just said they probably weren't federal level or state level, so they were probably local. Could you give me an example of who were the people you invited?
That's a very good question, and I don't know the full answer because very smart people handled that, and I just came and showed my film. But I know it was people who were very activist in their orientation. It was people in the governor's office. It was, commissioners and stuff, and I don't know how many of them came, but eventually we did get them to see. And people who had political influence behind the scenes. I mean, it was a group of people that know the community much better than I do and sort of hand-picked, like, who would spend their time and who had some influence. So
you would say that they were political leaders more than maybe, let's say, financial leaders, or both?
I don't know, actually. I mean, I think there were some of both, probably. I mean, there were wealthy people in the room, and I just... everybody has a little piece of the puzzle that they take care of, and I like sit in a room and edit in the dark, and then I bring it out and hand it to the people who know what to do with it. So.
Okay, well, it's good to repeat success. Is there some way we can find out, talk to a person, go, what you did?
Good question. Yeah, we're making a video right now, which we're going to post, that is in detail about the Santa Fe story, and we're doing interviews even next week. And so, what I can tell you is that there was a planner who was very involved, and we're going to interview him, and Johnny, who is the part of the couple that were from Texas, and he became kind of the activist head of the movement. And yeah, it is an interesting makeup of help that they got along the way, and they sort of took it on as their job to educate their commissioners because the local officials had no idea what any of this would mean, and they have to pay attention to so many different issues. They're just like, what? Some of them would know, and most of them wouldn't. And so all through the process of getting this evaluation done by the planning company in Kansas and the lawyer working on, what it was a new regulations. It was a new ordinance, and we're going to post our ordinance, and we're also going to post, there's the Environmental Law Center is making a boilerplate that can be used in smaller communities of the ordinance, And so some of it might translate to New York, I don't know, but we'll post that with the video, you know, sometime this summer. But if you want to specifically talk to somebody in Santa Fe, you know, I'll give you my card and I'll give you their number. and sometimes you'd get a much more detailed, and then hopefully the video will have details too to help people. So. Okay, so splitastate.com, and we have a few videos up already, but we have our trailer, but this will be a much more specific informational video. And there are extra videos on the DVD too that go into more detail about health effects and legal issues that are outtakes. But I think this will be a good one, you know, because it'll show sort of a model of what at least one community did. So I guess we're going to go over unless I leave. So thanks so much, and nice to meet y'all.